Thank you, listeners, for joining us for Wednesday's update in Elko County News. Commissioners are on the road today, so that means we sat down in advance with our County Commissioner, Jon Karr. Jon, we appreciate your visits, getting caught up on what's on the agenda. And you do these road trips at least once a year so you can get out to these outlying communities, right?
That is correct. But our agenda, because it's more of a road trip, is not much on here. So we'll have to have some other discussion points. But no, it's good out to the smaller communities, whether it be Jarbidge, Montello, wherever. And see everything from the roads to how the community's doing to, basically our rurals, when even we're the rurals, I guess it's in perspective.
Yeah, there are some very rural, remote communities within, Elko County is regarded as rural, but one of the bigger issues, I guess, too, Jon, will be discussed, and that is the issue of transferring the South Line water system from the town of Montello to Elko County. I guess there was a proposal, another discussion of a water system in Pilot Valley, selling that to the Wine Cup Gamble Ranch. So a lot of this is on the agenda lately.
Yeah, the water is always a factor, as you know, here even in our local community. That one stems way back from the railroad days and who really owns those rights. And part of it is in Utah, and that's part of the problem is a ranch up there is trying to claim some of those water rights and diverting some of the water. Part of it is that pipeline was designed to just bring water to the railroad, and it's not designed to be a potable water. So it's kind of the mess. But that's why giving it to the Wine Cup Gamble up there is actually, I think, the smarter thing to do, is just following the legal process to do it. And we're not giving it to them. They're buying it from us. But anyway, that, I don't remember, 100-year-old pipeline now is full of holes, and it's not really usable anymore.
And so this one, there aren't any concerns. It would be, as you said, the water would be used to, ensure livestock can graze and be a source of economic development for the county. So you're not looking at this as potable water for a community, for example.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we have a water system now in Montello, and the other ones that are farther out of town, they really need to design their own water wells or some kind of municipal system for themselves.
All right.
I think you're allowed up to 7, 8, not less than 10, I think, on a community quasi well. So we're only talking 4 or 5 houses out there that really need to look at a community well for themselves.
So then on the discussion of selling the South Line water system and water rights to the Pilot Peak Ranch, I guess that one, the staff doesn't recommend selling it because they believe that the Pilot Peak Ranch would actually control what kind of water comes out of there in the future. I guess that would be the point, right?
Right.
So that'll be a decision, though, that the county commission makes.
Correct.
And Nevada Division of Water Resources, they have attached a report for your consideration. So that's what you'll be looking over.
There you go. That's what we'll be discussing.
All right.
And that's why we also head out to these communities to see exactly what's going on. Jarbidge this time, it's a much better water shape than it has in the past, but they're still concerned because they're very small communities and they don't really have the income of how much a modern day water system costs. So all of these little communities struggle with that. That's
right, because any kind of water, that is going to dictate the kind of growth that you're allowed, whether it's commercial or certainly residential growth. Yeah.
And the infrastructure and putting water in now is big money. So these systems that are 100 years old, they were kind of cobbled together. Well, they shouldn't have got any better in the last 100 years.
Millions and millions of dollars to install and maintain water and even sewer septic systems, certainly in these outlying communities. I know Tuscarora has one that is a water system with some tanks up on the hill, and that one was facilitated, I think, by federal grants. When Lynn Forsberg was with the county, right? I think he kind of got a lot of those systems going before he retired.
I think so, yes.
Yeah, so makes a big difference. So on to discussion. Anything new on the radio system? Because I know that emergency management, the fire service, that's something that you've been following closely throughout your career, Jon.
We've done quite a few upgrades, but now everything I've understood, we have a lot of quality pieces. We just now getting them all to work together is part of the problems on the programming. But we're finally at least out of the Stone Age and not using chalkboard still or something. But either way, obviously that's a little bit facetious. But no, getting the whole system to work, but it is finally being upgraded.
So it looks like this discussion item would be to approve renewing Department of Transportation's agreement with the county with the Nevada Shared Radio System. There's something like 211 systems. Did I read that right? Or no, since 2011, I guess. So statewide radio systems, the county pays an annual cost. And so it's just kind of renewing that agreement, it looks like.
Correct.
For communication equipment. The interoperability, I guess, is what they used to call it, John. So Get My Ride. And in Jackpot, and people might not think about, they think of Jackpot as a small town. But if you don't have public transportation, how do people get to work if they don't own a car, especially if they work at a minimum wage job?
Yeah, so that's looking at expanding out to some of these, especially veterans and elderly people in these small communities and what they can do to help. I've told you more than once, I have mixed feelings on this. I think it's a necessary service, but it's very easy to all of a sudden start growing it, that it becomes its own basically cab service. And unfortunately, Elko no longer has a cab service. So once again, it's a necessary, but yet I wish some more private entity would be able to come in and take some of the regular service part.
Yeah, Elko's kind of at that in between. I don't think any private transportation service has been in a position to make enough money because, as you said, Elko Taxi went out of business and they were it for decades.
Well, they skyrocketed the insurance rates, and that's really what finally killed them. It was more than triple this year of what it would have been.
Wow.
So yeah, they finally just looked at the dollars and cents, and
doesn't make sense.
No longer made any sense. There you
go.
go.
When you're giving $5 or $6 or $7 cab rides from one end of town to the other, which is kind of what a lot of it was. So
right.
Yeah. So that will be discussion on Get My Ride. And since you are going to be, where are you traveling to? You're going to Jarbidge, right? Mm-hmm. And you're going to Jackpot?
Correct.
Okay. Jackpot's growing, right, John?
Everything I've seen, there's still some problems on zoning up there, and especially getting contractors. I've seen 2 or 3 different subdivisions proposed, but finally getting the contractors to do it has been a very big difficult. But no, since their marijuana dispensary went in, no, it seemed quite a bit of growth.
And I was just going to say, because of the dispensary. So from time to time, the discussion comes up. I mean, did Elko miss the, miss the boat when it came to approving a local dispensary? We know the Nua cannabis facility on the reservation within city limits, I guess, just does an amazing, booming business. But we don't see any of the proceeds from that in local government.
Yeah, Jackpot's done quite a bit of revenue up there, and Wendover as well. I'm not for it. It's just another excuse for somebody to not have their total mental health. I've had employees that somehow justify, like we've talked before, that drinking on the job is bad, but somehow smoking a little weed is a calming and almost a therapeutical thing. I'm laughing, going, if you watched yourself, it took you 10 minutes to flip a hamburger, but whatever. The point of this conversation, since it is legal, it's legal. So no, I believe they did miss the boat on that. But I'm not on the city council, and there you go. There's still some debate on Elko County if we have another license or not. One of the same company that owns the one in Jackpot is looking at that, because the state has changed laws on that and made it more accessible, but I don't know if ours is any different or not.
Do you think the county, well, I guess it is too, there are no proposals before the county, and whether or not there's an appetite on the board, and there's going to be at least one new member of the county commission come this fall.
Yeah, none of us are pushing to try to set one somewhere, but there just has been a talk on, well, is there even a license available? I don't know.
So we've got one, as you said, West Wendover, and then Wells do they have a growing facility, John?
Wells has a growing facility.
Okay, which is different, right?
Correct.
They're not dispensing, but they can certainly supply to those facilities that do grow a little closer to home, cut down on those transportation costs, I guess.
Because I argued that as well, of when the county first did a ban on it, I wanted us to be more clear on what exactly we're banning. The dispensary, the growery versus the kitchen, I guess you could call it, the ones that makes the edibles and the oils.
Cultivation, I guess? Or?
No, once you've grown it, then they have to then take it to their lab or kitchen or whatever you want to call it to make the gummies and make the more edibles and those kind of things.
Oh, okay.
So those are the 3 different licenses, but we had first banned them all. Now we've allowed the dispensary up in Jackpot, but I don't think we've touched the other 2 since then.
Okay.
But nobody's also come forward to try, so So there.
All right. So who knows if it's something that comes out in the future. Interesting position to be in Elko County, certainly. We did touch on it just a little bit. People who are interested, if you've not yet registered to vote, you should register to vote. You can go to registertovoteenv.gov, I think, or any of those websites will get you Secretary of State, or you can go right here to our county clerk's office, right, John?
Correct.
And you've done a really, I think, fair job in representing the various issues that the clerk's office has been facing lately, and I'm sure that the clerk's office appreciates that. They've seen a lot of changes lately, haven't they?
They have. Like we've talked before on the radio, some of the staff, the clerk's office used to also do a lot of the paperwork and the storing, filing for the judicial center or the district court judges, and that has now been transferred. So those employees are under the actual district court. So it cut the office about in half, but there's still plenty to do on the election side as well.
Yeah, and she's still busy with a lot of different licenses, obviously.
Correct.
Yeah, so there's plenty to do in the clerk's office, and still working on those capital needs, right, John? Because there's storage issues, public, or I guess employee health issues. That's still a work in progress, right, on the new building plans?
Well, let's take a step back. We should almost be done with a new air addition for in the basement of the courthouse. I think the last time they're doing the final electrical install was the hang-up. But anyway, that'll breathe some fresh air into the basement of the courthouse, and because they were the employees were complaining about what they call it,
Justice Court flu.
Judge's flu and all that. To me personally, that was rather embarrassing to have our employees be. Even if there's no truth to it, there's probably some truth that we need some better fresh air. They have mini splits down there, so the temperature's okay, but no, it's pretty stagnant air. So I think this will bring in some fresh air, change that out, hopefully a little better working conditions. But we are still looking at the new building and what that would cost and how to proceed with that.
And are there more meetings, do you think, that will happen in the new year? And things start to wind down a little bit this time of year, right, John? As like you said, you're doing your road trips to the outlying communities in county business. There's an election kind of plopped into the middle of it, and then you are still in the midst of capital planning, correct?
Correct. We haven't finalized the newest one that was presented to us, but it was considerably less within our budget. So I think the architects are still looking at a couple of other options that they wanted to confirm as well. But then we're always looking at the ambulance and the fire services on their building. If anybody's drove up by Elko High School and see all the ambulances parked outside in that area, we obviously could use a little bit better facility for the ambulance crew. And the fire department, the county one, Matt's done a great job on building the fire trucks, the infrastructure with that. But no, that all those fire trucks are outside too. We were using the Wright Motors old building as part of our storage, but no, we eventually need to have a permanent place for them as well.
Well, that's kind of a fun topic for people, actually, because the county property is really prime. They're on Idaho Street, as you said, the old Wright Motor Building. That's the place that's being looked at for the new Justice Complex?
Correct.
Okay. And so we knew that the initial estimates came in and they were way over, 60-something million, and you're looking more in, what now, 45 million?
40 to 50.
Okay.
Kind of in that ballpark.
Yeah. Just for a new Justice building, or?
Correct.
Okay.
There's still some updates to the old courthouse and some other ones to the annex building, but for the most part, the 80 to 90 million, no, it had quite a few other outlying buildings and remodels as well.
So does it look like that historic building that was the old high school, the old library, is that going to stay where it is? I know it depends. If you work in that building, you're not a fan, because obviously.
That building is really a historical pile of junk, but people have their emotional ties to it. We haven't finalized that, but it looks less like it would be torn down. It's more of what would we do with it with a decent price tag for slightly remodeling. But no, the public defender's office would be moved out of there.
And that's what's most important, right? They
Correct.
need modern facilities, just like everybody else.
If you actually went in there, it's kind of embarrassing as well. It looks as bad as my office, but I'm a private guy in my own place. I don't mind my office looking horrible, but no, theirs are really cramped and don't really have the storage, and the space to really perform like they should.
All right. So that's all part of the plan. If you don't mind, since we are kind of in between agendas, this is a road trip the commissioners are on this Wednesday. But what do you envision? What is in that Justice Complex? Do you want to visit that? Just that Idaho Street parcel? What's going to propose to go there, John?
If I remember the last prints, the bank building we remodeled would actually become the public defenders in that area. But then, so that would be east of that would be where the new complex would be built.
There'd be courtrooms.
Plenty of room for the secretary, storage, all those kind of things, but especially the different entrances. So,
because you need secure.
Secure entrances. So for the judges and the employees to safely go in, but also the victims as well. That's one of the complaints now that, some of these murder trials and everything else, you're not necessarily the families with the murderer sitting right there, but you can be right next to the murderer's family or other people. There's just a very tight area that probably shouldn't be.
Right. I mean, for obvious reasons. So that's why, again, Elko County is looking at doing these modern facilities. We have modern problems and security issues, and we have a beautiful historic old courthouse, which could still be used for other purposes, right, John?
Oh, yeah. The treasurer, the recorder, those kind of positions.
Assessor, those.
Exactly. We're not planning on all of a sudden making it a boarded up, mothballed or something. No, it'll still be a functioning building. It just won't be quite the security needs of an actual courthouse.
Okay.
We pondered one of the judge rooms to be kind of a historic courtroom, but it would still be feasible when visiting judges do show up. So it'd be slightly museum-ish, if that's a word, but yet still function.
And that could probably be used for any kind of venue that needs less security, say.
Correct.
That's right. So we're not talking about child custody dispute. I mean, because a lot of these things, that's what can really blow up.
Oh, yes, exactly.
Okay. Talking with our county commissioner, Jon Karr, here today, just getting caught up on county issues as the commissioners are meeting on the road. So we sat down a little bit early. And let's see, anything else? What else were we talking about? We're just trying to... Oh, you mentioned fire and ambulance, and we know the city's looking at building a new fire station, perhaps. Do you think there's any room for joint projects, or?
They sure talked about up by, what is that, the weather station up kind of by the Peterbilt building, up in that kind of area. But we haven't really finalized anything.
Oh, does the county have a parcel then, or because I know this?
Well, just up in that area we've looked, but no, we haven't sat down. And yes, we're looking at this plot specifically. Matt and I, or Chief Peterson and I, have looked at different areas. What if you put it by dispatch? That way you're close to the on ramp, or
with the airport.
North, yes, going north of Elko, but that's still pretty close to the Elko. So do you want to with that facility? But we really just respond to two different. We have a mutual call and respect for each other, but the calls don't usually overlap. So even though that would be close, they're still usually headed to, whether it be Carlin, headed the other direction on I-80 or north of town. But we've also looked at over by the police station and that new building getting built there. If we had Silver Street go all the way and then finally connect
to Manzanita.
Exactly. So.
Okay.
So no, we've been discussing quite a few options, but we haven't pinpointed one yet.
Well, that's really healthy, John. It sounds like you are at least one of the commissioners on the board. You're looking at places to put that new property tax, right? I mean, because that was why the county wanted it, to invest in these capital needs.
Correct. Especially, do the whiteboard challenge. What is our most calls? Where are they at? And how could we... What's our best response to them? And so, that's what we're all analyzing at the moment.
Okay. But that's still on the agenda. And would it be combined with an ambulance facility?
We're debating that as well, too. We're looking at both, yes. Does that make more sense? Because out in Spring Creek, we're kind of starting to do that anyway. Our first couple bids to expand out there and include them we're as bad as the school district. It was way over budget, but no, we're still re-looking at how we could combine that out there. Man the station and maybe even have some overlap on what capabilities are.
Yeah, it makes sense in some of those locations, as you said, co-locating facilities, EMS, fire, ambulance, rescue, because some of them are dual trained, right?
Correct.
So that's possible. Spring Creek does seem to appreciate having its own ambulance service.
It's cost us a little more than we expected. We thought the call volume would be up enough to quasi pay for it. and it hasn't. But I still think it was the right decision to have that out there. As a rather large population, and to have to wait for the ambulance to come over the hill. No, I think it's a smart move to have out there.
Well, probably what some of it is too, John, is just people getting accustomed to the idea that they do have an ambulance because they went for decades without
Correct.
having one. So, yeah.
Yeah, if you call an ambulance, you're 15, 20 minutes easily, if not more.
So I think a lot of people are just used to driving themselves when they needed to get help, or having, obviously a family member drive them. But so there is an ambulance service up and running in Spring Creek. Meals on Wheels is also in Spring Creek. And Matt McCarty said that is doing really well.
No, it's too bad Spring Creek wasn't really thought of as long-term as it should have been. Being an HOA, I think they've done a great job at it, don't get me wrong. But infrastructure-wise, it wasn't really designed properly to begin with. But once again, changing that out now, you just economically could never do that.
They have so many ongoing issues in Spring Creek, John. Looking at just the Planning Commission agenda for the county, whether it's subdivisions, zoning request change, the big issue with possibly putting in a ski area overlooking Spring Creek. But what's interesting is that you would think that the majority of people are opposed, but I don't know about you, but I'm also hearing from people who say, hey, a ski area would be fantastic out there. So I don't know what you're hearing, but...
Oh, I've heard everything in between.
Okay, right.
The one proposal is kind of wild. Pedro Maz actually came up was talking about Boise, how a lot of those lower areas right there, the city actually bought up or bought rights to have, and that's why they have such great bicycle
conservation
trails.
Easements, yeah.
They have some great facilities. I don't know if we could now backpedal and go up and buy some of those things at the base of the Rubies, but it definitely was. I liked his idea, but once again, we weren't really ever thought out correctly long term to begin with.
Yeah, you would have to, those conservation easements would probably be so expensive now, right? But you could maybe pair with some other nonprofits or agencies, organizations that have that same interest in mind. Maybe
Right.
It's possible. But yeah, and I know you're not a Spring Creek resident. I'm not either. So we're not, obviously talking about something that we know what it seems like to live out there. But they have road issues. Their water issues are pretty big too. And I know they sent out questionnaires asking if maybe they should try to obtain their water system again. So
yeah, it's unfortunate the water rights were sold off years and years and years ago to control their own fate. But yeah, it's a tough situation out there because once again, it was never really designed properly to expand.
It was supposed to be a retirement community,
yeah,
right?
McCulloch kind of did two different retirement communities and made his money and smiled all the way to the bank, I guess, and then decided to build a bridge from London. So there you go.
So
there's a little history lesson for everybody.
There's a history.
Yeah, Lake Havasu and Spring Creek were designed by the same guy.
Wow, Lake Havasu had more water, obviously, bigger opportunities for development, but Spring Creek might have been the springboard for Lake Havasu, if you think about it, unless he owned them concurrently. I'm not sure. McCullough?
Well, there's a little bit of concurrent because some of the chain and stuff out in the marina, that's actually from the London Bridge.
Oh, wow. You weren't kidding. Okay. Well, who knows all this too is Bert Gurr, because he was talking about this, our local lawmaker. He was one of the initial employees of the development of McCullough.
Yeah, so was the Cully family, so that's why I knew a lot about it too.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Interesting. So we could learn a lot of lessons, obviously, going forward. And we know there are, planning, like we said, planning issues. Not this week. We want to reassure. I think the Ruby Mountain rezone issue is coming back in October.
Yeah, we wouldn't go on the road to Jackpot and have something like that. So everybody in the morning, what the heck?
Yeah.
I've already passed something. No, it'll be in a public and probably, later in October.
Okay. So the Planning Commission will see it again, and then you guys will see it again. Correct. Or see it for the first time, I think.
Right.
So once it gets kicked up, either way, it's probably headed for an appeal. Talking with our county commissioner, Jon Karr, and we're about 20 or so minutes into the program. And
well, you brought up property tax, so we got to go
there. Okay, good.
good.
Let's talk about that. Yep.
Part of that was also, excuse me, before I get ahead of myself, the property tax that almost everybody should know about now. There was a mistake made on the billing. The billing mistake came from asking the state, hey, this new school district tax, is it a new tax? And the state said yes. So that meant it was going to be fully abated. So then they sent out the bills to everybody. That would be with all, basically abate means the discounts, basically with all the discounts. Well, the law was written with no, this doesn't get any discounts. It's zero abated, and that's why they're sending it out, and it's costing considerably more. But also part of the confusion, and I even ran into myself, is when we were voting on it, we were in the impression that we, the county, are 45 cents. We were just giving this school district 20 of ours. Well, how they ended up finally implementing that, no, it's an actual new tax. It just didn't raise the property rates. So if yours was 50 cents or 45 or whatever, because of the county, it still stayed 45. But because of how they wrote the law, it is a new tax, and it's fully, none of it's abated. So that's why none of the discounts are on there, and that's why we had to send out the new tax bills. And that's why some people got a little bit of a shock.
And so it's not a one-time, right? I mean, this is going to be a new tax going forward.
So let's use silly round numbers. Okay, somebody pays $10,000 a year in property tax because of this. That's 100%, no abatements. Going forward, you will now be under the cap of the 3% or the 7%, 8% for commercial. Now, so that means next year it could possibly go up to 3% or the 8%, but no, you're still now at the 10. It didn't, you're not going to drop down because now it's fully abated and everything. No, that's the new level, and it can only go up.
Wow.
Well, obviously, if we go into a major recession and property values collapse, but that's a whole different equation on how the property tax is paid, and that's why it's so confusing.
So we should probably explain the abatements. And if you're a property owner, you may have figured this out by now. But so if you have a primary residence, you own one property, one house, your tax is capped at a 3% rate, correct? Is that how that's explained?
3% increase.
Well, right. It can't go up more than that. So,
but in this case, it can because it's new how they wrote it at one time.
And now it's going to go to 10.
Makes it sound nice that it's only the first year and it will be 100% no abatements on it. Oh, okay. Well, you'll be fully abated next year, but that's at the new rate, so no.
So it's not, you
don't get those
your
discounts.
taxes have gone up.
Correct. And I myself will tell you on the air, no, how I first read this and how I even approved it and everything else, no, taxes were not going to go up. And so I'm telling you right now on the air that I was incorrect as well.
Wow. So now we enter the lobbyist, right, for this project. Do you think he misled us? I mean, because they were the ones that, remember, they crafted and engineered this thing clearly outside of Elko counties.
I don't think any of this was truly deceitful on we can fool them into believing this and pass it. I know you're kind of laughing at it, but I don't really think they did. It's just how the wording went that this is not going to be abated. Well, just listen to me sounding that too. Okay, it's not going to be abated. Okay, no big deal. Well, when you really do have something that's been fully abated and something's abated, once again, that's a silly word for basically the discounts. It's very complicated how it is, so let's just call it that. That's a huge difference. That's why it was a couple million versus 5 million.
Yeah, 3.7, I think, is what's on the table, right?
So, yeah, it's quite the difference in wording.
Wow.
I figured, now that was by fully abated, but the county wouldn't have been that if they'd gotten straight out of the county money that we were already doing. But either way, that's still
42 cents.
Correct.
Okay.
But that's still, they ended up bringing up even more because everything was 100%.
But we're above the cap now, right? Isn't that a problem? Okay.
No, we still didn't raise your actual. We're still underneath the cap. It's just how that part of the abatement and your percentage. And I know it sounds like I'm probably saying weird words in here and trying to mumble jumble. The word salad, I guess, is the new way. But no, this is the property tax, extremely complicated taxing entity from, it's not just my house is worth $500,000 and I pay this much in a property tax. No, it's how old, how much abatement. It's kind of wild calculation.
But the bottom line is, yep, the taxes have gone up and the money goes specifically to the rural schools account, right?
Correct.
Okay, so that's a statewide pool of money, right? The rural schools. Oh, it's just going to be specific to Elko County's schools capital fund.
Okay, this is where you get into, and I actually argued with our DA, our legal, on this. The state has a rural account set up to match, but it's a grant system. You have to apply for it. Well, none of the rurals in any other county have set this property tax up. So in theory, none of them can apply for it because none of them put this property tax in place other than Elko County, who was actually forced to, even though we had the option not to. Let's not kid ourselves. We really didn't have an option not to. So we put it in place. And this is where I argue with legal that if we would have still had it as the county and just giving them our part of our tax increment, they still could have matched it. And legal saying no. Well, I think the state just wants to make sure there's a tax increment there, and they'll match it. They want to win. They want to say, hey, see what we're doing for rural schools. It's there. But as of right now, nobody's applied, and nobody other than Elko County has that tax to apply. So we'll see what happens.
Wow. So
because it's also kind of confusing. This was really a last minute deal with the legislation, and we're not really sure why. We're not really even sure why it got. We're all shocked it went through. But either way, it went through, and so we're still kind of almost like the silly thing Pelosi said years ago. We got to pass it and see what's in it. Well, that's almost what happened here.
And I think it also maybe heightens that sense of maybe we should have sued over this thing, right?
Oh, we still are.
Yeah, exactly.
We're still in a lawsuit with the state about it.
But it's changed a bit now, or?
No.
Okay, it's the same lawsuit.
Well, I don't want to comment just because I don't want to say the wrong word. Oh, that's
true.
But no. There's no, I don't have a gag word or anything like that. I just got to remember what the state came back with. They said, and I don't remember specifically what it was, but then we're still reviewing it again. My gut's telling me we're going to lose because they're going to say, well, the state does this to all sorts of counties in similar ways of making Clark County do this or Washoe County. Basically, the whole point of it, this Constitution says you can't basically pick on one county. That's in our state constitution. But how the states got away with it is saying, hey, any county over this population, let's just say it's 1 million, well, that's only Clark. Okay, well, that's specific to Clark. Well, they've done that before, and they've done it to Washoe. So the state, when I say them, saying, well, this law only applies to counties with, I don't remember what it was,
X population.
35,000 to like 42,000 population, and it's only Elko County that fits. That's what our lawsuit is saying. You basically singled us out. But because of the past history, I think we're going to lose, but that's what we're battling.
Wow. So the story that needs to be told going forward is that, the state decided that property tax owners in Elko County would be paying more for the school's capital fund. And it's put the school district in a very hard place, right, John? I mean, wouldn't you agree? I've talked to the superintendent about this, and, he just shakes his head. I mean, they don't want to be blamed for the increased tax either, because they had a pay-as-you-go. It defeated. Then the bond
Well, the one part I'm going to have to look back at my own, and I'll use my example. Being in the county, you actually received a 22 to 25 cent reduction in your property tax because the city picked up 20 cents. So that means that mine and the county actually dropped 20 cents. So I don't know my property tax after that 20 cent reduction versus this new abatement, because my overall pennies per dollar didn't go up. It's just this abatement. So that part I'm going to have to do the calculation on and go talk to the treasurer about, or the assessor. Does that make sense? You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it does make sense.
Because the only ones that really got the discount were the cities, the rural. Spring Creek basically got the discount because Wells, Carlin, Elko, Wendover, all of those picked up 20 cents.
Right.
Of that pay-as-you-go 75.
And then Cheryl Paul, the assessor, or the treasurer, I'm sorry, Cheryl's our treasurer, explained that of the entities that were most impacted are the casinos and the mines. So Nevada Gold Mines, Nevada Gold Mines, $265,000 as a result of this mistake, right? But now we're hearing that it's not just a one-time mistake going forward. So they'll be
going forward. It's your new bill is the 265 plus whatever. But but once again, I'm going to have to look at myself.
Okay.
And I'll even come in there and tell you what mine is, because see what that difference is.
And John's situation is unique. Has a residence, a primary property. That's where he and his family live. And then the 8% cap applies to secondary homes that are used for investment or vacation properties. And you pay a higher rate on that too. So
correct.
Yep. So more to come.
But I can even use my commercial property in town, and so I can.
Oh yeah.
I'll try to get those for the next time we're on the radio and give an example.
That's perfect. And then keep us up to date on the lawsuit now, which is probably entirely different for some people listening.
I think the judge will just end up throwing it out. I don't hope that, but I think that's what will happen.
All right, John, anything else that we should talk about in closing? You've spent some good time with us today. We appreciate it. Commissioners are on the road, so John came in on his day off, essentially, to record the radio show. Thank you.
Well, still offer stands of finding a Democrat so we can have our political debate on here, Lori. There you go. We'll have our presidential debate on Elko Live.
Well, we can. Oh my goodness, yeah. Well, just vote. Register to vote. Get engaged. I know I'm talking with the Chamber of Commerce more. Government Affairs are going to host at least one. They're going to host some candidate forums coming up too. So we'll have your commissioners on too on the air. The ones that are seeking Wiley Bruff's seat as he's vacating.
I was about to say, since I'm on the ballot, but yeah, nobody's running against me, so.
Right. Yeah, well, that's true.
I'm pretty sure I'll get at least one vote, I hope.
All right. Better take Audrey some flowers.
There we go.
Thanks, listeners. Thank you for joining us for Elko Live today here on KELK.